An artist won an art competition at their local fair using a piece of art generated with Midjourney. And some of the internet are absolutely losing their minds. This, my friends, is what we call rage bait. Not as serious as it sounds. And once you know the details, you're going to think it's kind of dumb that people were getting so mad about it. But also, we're going to kind of debunk a lot of the very dumb takes being had about this in this video. Despite the fact that it's rage bait, there wasn't really any way I wasn't going to talk about this. So first and foremost, for anyone who didn't look any more closely than the clickbaity tweets or the headlines, the person who won an award for their AI art, it was for a computer art category. It wasn't like they were beating out someone's paintings or hand drawings or something. People use AI in their art every day. If you've ever masked out a subject using the automatic tools in After Effects or Photoshop, you've used it. If you've used a background remover on your phone, you've done it. If you've used any of those face tuning apps on your phone, you've done it. This video right now you're watching will be using AI to clean up my face because it's midnight when I'm recording this, and I've spent the past 2 days chainsawing a shed in trees down to put a new shed in my backyard, and I've got 2 days left of it ahead of me. My back is killing me. I look like crap. We're still making the video. This was inevitable, as someone specifically, the creator, Sincarnate, love the name by the way, specifically wanted to make a statement about AI art and where it is, and basically they wanted to bait these news headlines and things like that, and I kind of appreciate it because someone was going to do it. We need to get past this dumb bump of attention grabbing and everyone freaking out about it in order to get it taken more seriously and do real things with it. But cool. Really, that should be all you think about, and that's it. But people are so mad with some of these replies get absolutely ridiculous, talking about how it's putting someone else's art, putting your name on someone else's art and the unethical nature of that, which we'll talk about. Then, of course, there are lots of people accusing it of plagiarizing or tracing or whatever, which is not how these programs work. We'll talk about that in a moment. It's just, someone said you shouldn't enter it because you can't copyright AI art, which is actually incorrect. We're going to talk about that in a moment. I was even wrong about that. And then an even more hyperbolic reply of, we're watching the death of artistry unfold right before our eyes. If creative jobs aren't safe from machines, then even high-skilled jobs are in danger of becoming obsolete. What will we have then? So my goal here with this channel, this is the reason I wanted to start the channel, because if you're going to be closed-minded and not listen to any counter arguments and just, be like, no, it's bad, keep it away, then cool, I don't care. It's not going away, so you're just going to have to deal with it. This is the okay boomer response. But the whole point I started this channel was because it's not going away. And with my main job and work on the internet being educating people about tech, making it more accessible and all of that, I wanted to do so with regards to AI art as well, because I think most of the people who get super mad about it just don't understand how it works, on top of don't understand how art works at the same time. Because there are plenty of artists who embrace AI art because they understand these things. So I want to break this down for you. First and foremost, if you don't know how AI art works, I explain it way more elegantly in this big video essay about it on my main Eeples Vox YouTube channel. I'll have that linked below, and if you just want the excerpt, I'll have that unlisted linked below, as I'll probably just push it public on this channel some point after this video goes up. But effectively, AI art generation for the majority of services you're seeing now producing these cool results, which is Midjourney, DALL-E 2, Stable Diffusion, Disco Diffusion, those kinds of tools, they're done using the same methods that humans use to learn how to draw and paint and create images, just done at scale, because the entire point of computers existing is to do what humans do, but faster and at scale. That is literally the point. I mean, why else did we build these damn machines for so long? Why else did we teach sand to think? The first process is the classification of images. They scour a provided image library and otherwise just images on the internet, gather them all up, and then classify them based on what they are. And they are very thoroughly documented and classified with using what would just be normal data entry processes into what is in each of the image, what the image represents. Emotions, feelings, individual objects, animals, people, reactions, things like that. It classifies those and teaches the computer, makes those very basic computer references of keywords, basically. Like, this is dog, this is hot dog, this is cat, this is catfish, those little differences to help recognize it, and it trains the machine learning to recognize that. But then the act of creating the image is through diffusion. Diffusion is the process of generating just random Gaussian noise, which is going to be just random dots. Like if you take dots on the paper and then you use them to connect the dots to make something else, it generates random noise and then uses everything it has referenced from those images to create whatever text prompt you feed it. And that's where the machine learning training part comes in, which is how all artificial intelligence works. It is trained by basically being like, did I do a good job? You know, basically like grade school. It's like, did I do a good job? And you say yes or no, or you rate it on a scale, and then it adjusts how it's going to, you know, what it takes what it did in that step, applies the scale, and continues. Did I do a good job? Did I do a good job? Did I do a good job? And as you know, that's done at scale using very expensive server hardware and tons of graphics cards and things like that, you know, way more than you could ever do by hand. Eventually it figures out the right patterns to recreate images that you want. This is not tracing, as many are calling it. It is not plagiarizing someone else's work. It is taking millions upon millions of images and sample ideas of what a cat is or a taco is, and using that to understand what that looks like. And then when you type in a text prompt, it pulls up a random noise thing and does what it can from that noise to generate an image of a taco or a cat. It's just how it works. That is how your human mind thinks and draws. You spend your entire life taking in images, taking in understanding of how the world works, how colors look, how lighting and shading looks, how the act of drawing looks, and as well as styles. You see other people's work. You see how they executed certain tasks. You see what their style is. You take all of that information in, and that builds your understanding of what a cat or a taco looks like, how it should be presented, what it should look like in an image, and then you use that to generate an image of a taco or a cat from nothing. You were drawing it from the randomness in your brain. It is the exact same process, just computerized and done at scale with a lot more data points and things like that, because that's how computers work. There is nothing unethical about that. That is how it works. Now, some concerns come up with regards to, again, calling it tracing and what they believe is a copyright violation of the source images. But you don't violate anyone's copyright when you spend your entire life taking in other people's copyrighted images and using them to improve your understanding of how you recreate that image. Here is a leopard or a cheetah, probably a cheetah. Actually, I think it's a leopard. I wasn't looking very close. It's a cat. This tells me, yes, that makes the same kind of cat movements that my little cats at home make, which means I can add that to my brain capacity of what I understand for cats big and small and how they draw or how they behave, and then I can draw them. And when I do the little cat draw stretchy pose, am I giving credit to whoever's photo is in this wildlife cinematography issue of American Cinematographer? I can't talk tonight. No. I don't need to give attribution for every image, every influence, every artist I've ever looked at, every photo I've ever looked at. That doesn't make any sense. I'm not stealing their copyright if in 10 years or even 10 days I go and draw, paint, or go take another photo of a leopard, and it might even look similar because it's doing a pose that all cats do. What? I know a lot of people feel like it's a more sensitive thing because it's a computer doing it, but as long as it's not literally just being like, oh, I can pull this one individual image and just apply a filter on it and spit it back out, which is not what they do, it's fine. You're never going to produce an AI art image with any of these mainstream tools, especially since they only keep adding to and improving their data set and their randomness. You're never going to pull one out that just looks realize what I just said. That looks exactly like an exact image or something that someone else produces. And with regards to copying styles, it's never going to do it perfectly. And that's also what people do. You can go on any platform and see all kinds of artists copying each other's styles or trying to sell something in the style of something else. You've got cover bands are a thing. Cover bands get paid to go play it. Like, just do me a favor and spend a little bit of time thinking critically about these arguments before you go posing huge philosophical debates on Twitter or whatever platform you choose. It would make the world so much of a better place. But I understand it makes people sensitive about that. But keep in mind, again, that is exactly what you do. And if we're going to use technology to go beyond our normal human capacity, then we need computers to do what we do and do them better. And with regards to it being the death of artistry or art or whatever, those claims are so hyperbolic, they're kind of embarrassing. Like, if you study anything about art, if you learn about why even a specific artist does the things that they do, you would know that that doesn't begin to make sense as an argument. In fact, one of the number one lessons, since I was pulling up the American Cinematographer magazine, the reason there's issues focused on like wildlife or the art of light, the number one thing that makes something cinematic. Okay, here's where you want to know what it could have been seen as the death of photography. Instagram filters. Everyone puts the same Instagram filters or the same Facetune or whatever on their photos, and they all look the same. And you know what happens as a result? None of them stand out. None of them look like art. None of them really matter. Because that's what happens when you just do copy-paste trends. The number one thing about cinematography or a piece of art is that just about everything is intentional and controlled. And that's what makes something look cinematic. We're using this as an example. Not every piece of art has to be cinematic, obviously. I'm just using a specific example here. What makes something look cinematic is that you controlled everything and made it look like the exact image that you wanted to. There's no randomness. There's no, whoops, I forgot about that. Oh, well. You control the lighting. You control the camera angle. You control directs, the actor's take. You control the environment, the set design, the costume design, the makeup. You control every aspect to produce the exact image that you want. It's not shallow depth of field, lots of motion blur, shooting at 24 frames per second, using crazy LUTs, shooting with, cropped in 85 millimeter lenses. None of those. Those are things that can contribute to a cinematic look if that's the look you're going for and you're controlling for that. But just, the whole trend of, I'm going to shoot everything blown out with shallow depth of field like this. I do this because I want the lights I have in my environment to be present and to kind of look really cool, but to not be overstimulating. Because used to, I would shoot with a much wider angle lens and a very visible background. I did that for years before I switched to this studio, and it was always too distracting. Whereas this is a little bit distracting. That's how I kind of keep it. But you're not reading every game on my game shelf or something like that. This isn't a cinematic image. It's just a shallow depth of field image. Shooting at 24 FPS doesn't magically make something look cinematic. Something can look cinematic at another frame rate. The same thing applies to all of art. The actual meaning behind it, the artist's motivations, the intentions, the things they did in their craft are all things that make an art piece an art, and then evokes a response from the viewer, the consumer, the person on the other end of that art piece. That's what makes art art. That is the artistry. You think about the dumb examples of someone taping a banana to a wall, or there was the toilet pieces, that whole debate of what is art. The same thing. It's something someone does with an intention and invokes a response from the audience. That is art. That is the entire artistry process. You can look at something and be like, well, that's dumb. What did you do? Did you make art? Did you go tape a banana on a wall at $1 million art gallery? No, the artist did. That was their art. They pulled it off. You didn't. The most unproductive, I'd argue counterproductive thing you can do in a society is sit back, look at someone doing something that is seemingly progressing a medium or a field, and be like, well, that's dumb. They're not doing enough. Well, you're doing nothing at all. Now, as I was explaining what the artistry is, a lot of the counter arguments I've seen, not specifically tied to this news event, but when discussing AI art in general, is that AI art cannot produce emotion. It cannot pull that emotion out of the viewer. It cannot be made with motivations because the AI doesn't have it. And to some degree, you're right. But that's why AI art is not like an I'm feeling lucky Google button. It's not like just like a press button, present master art piece. And I've been trying to explain this to so many people. And honestly, I feel this art gallery, or it's an art fair thing, kind of distracts from that point, because my whole sticking point in the first place is that the majority of uses for AI art we're going to see in the actual art field, aside from memes and things like that, is mostly going to involve doing something else with that piece. It is the starting point. It is a rough sketch. It is something you use to turn into something else, both because you're not getting the exact results you want and because you want to make it a piece of art. You don't get all of the emotional involvement and the motivations that you put into it out of it. Sometimes you do, because there is still the artistry of prompt crafting. Again, it's not a push button, receive masterpiece kind of scenario. You have to spend hours upon hours figuring out all of the exact prompting you want to give, the styles you want to take inspiration from, the aspect ratios on top of the exact description to get what you want in the first place. I have multiple videos walking you through this, and there's still way more to do beyond that, and obviously each different tool. And a lot of people take an AI art from one generator, run it through another to get, added in modules for that, erase a couple bits in DALL-E and fill that in, and then take it, start it in Photoshop, and continue on from there. This badass little Space Emperor notebook right here. This started as a random prompt that we did during my Midjourney masterclass. I was typing in stuff about a Space Emperor thing because that is what I wanted to create. Because I, as the artist, was like, hey, I'd really like to make a cool piece with some like Marvel Nova kind of Space Emperor looking dude in space with some cool nebula graphics and things like that. As with many artists, same thing when I go to take photos. I was just out taking, this isn't the camera, but I took my Nikon Z9 out to a local park while we were traveling today. And I had a general idea of what I wanted to get a photo of, but it's not like I knew from some park I'd never been to, I was going to be like, I want to go here. I want to take a picture of this thing. I want to take it in this way. But I had a general idea and I went and started shooting and I figured it out along the way. Now I got a really cool picture from it, but I'm going to spend hours potentially editing it up in Lightroom, Photoshop, whatever, to turn it into the final piece that I want. The same thing with AI art. I had a general idea. It was random rabbit hole, as I do with ADHD. Started during the prompt crafting series, and then I happened to like one of those images, took note of it during that series, and then went back to it. And I kept iterating on it, and then from there, I took it even further. What you see on this notebook, which is available at analogdreams.threadless.com, is not a final generation out of Midjourney. Midjourney did not make this image. I did. Using assets I created with Midjourney that I spent hours prompting out of it. You have the little guy, which again, hundreds of iterations. You've got the background, and you've got the Nova. These are 3 different total, composites pulled from Midjourney over the course of hundreds of iterations, and then multiple different versions and rendering takes of each of these blended together. And then I still took it into DALL-E 2, got him a new helmet because I didn't like the one it came with, and then I took it both into Photoshop and Luminar Neo to do additional tweaks. I added the symbol to his chest. I did all sorts of things on top of the final crafting and polish patch to actually make it worthwhile for printing. You're going to tell me because I didn't specifically sketch this out myself that I didn't make it. I didn't pose the butterfly on this picture that I took. I didn't transmit all the RGB data onto the image sensor and then digitize it myself. Hell, I don't even develop my own film because I don't want to mess with the chemicals. But I still take film photos and then I scan it in myself and then I continue editing them. Hell, I have this piece right here. My Cthulhu prom picture. Prom photo. This one printed off to a little cropped or whatever. I spent an entire week compositing on this every day. It's not perfect, but it turned out really well. It started with a base Midjourney prompt, but aside from the general silhouette of the guy and only 2/3 of it, because I modified the rest of it significantly, it doesn't even resemble the image that Midjourney gave me. I spent hours tweaking the body shape, balancing out the symmetry, tweaking the tentacles, and then he only had one eye. I gave him the space for and then gave him all the other eyes, the teeth, the mouth, the goatee, the suit, the wings, the background, the ships, and then composited it all and stylized it all to match and be a style that I wanted, which doesn't at all resemble the piece I started with. I spent more on this than I spend editing some videos where I do line up all the lighting and do all the cinematography for. You're going to tell me I didn't make this because Midjourney was involved at some point? No. And then some people were arguing that it was unfair or misleading because he didn't disclose that it was an AI piece. And he did list via Midjourney on it. Actually, I want to connect this to the point of this piece was made exclusively, as far as it was described, as just renders from Midjourney and then upscaled with gigapixel. I firmly believe that kind of use case of just here's the Midjourney image or DALL-E or whatever, I'm done, is not going to be a lasting real world use case. I don't think most people are going to do that because it's not You're not going to get art that way for the same reason. You're not going to see the motivation, the emotion or whatever at all times because it wasn't that way. And you want to take it to the next level, and you can't perfectly scope all of the different styles and things like that you want out of it. And frankly, from an artistry perspective, it's not as fun. Like, there will be a subcategory of people who just focus on their prompt crafting skills and then move on. But I don't think most people are going to be that way. But as I was saying, with that in mind, does that mean now that every artist in this computer art category need to disclose every single tool they've ever involved in their artist process? Because that would be kind of insane. Now, I did want to give backing to one claim, both made by the artist himself as well as some people suggesting in the replies, of that there should just be an AI art category. And I believe that should be the case for purely AI generated art pieces. Like a category for an image like this that is just generated by the AI and otherwise done nothing other than scaled and printed. There should be a category for that, because it's basically just a category of prompt crafting. I would be in favor of that. That would be pretty cool, just because that treats prompt crafting as a skill or as an art, and it's judged based on that. That would be cool. But I don't think anything involving AI art generators should be limited to its own category, because again, AI is going to continue to be involved in every aspect of art creation moving forward, and has been for years already. That's just drawing arbitrary lines in the sand that are completely contradictory and aren't productive. I know this was a little bit more rambly than I usually do. Like I said, my goal here is to educate you on how these systems work. And I think reacting to this and walking through the thought process and why these things are wrong with the information of how they work, I hope that was helpful. If not, maybe it was just fun listening to me ramble angrily. I do it sometimes. Try not to do it too much. I hope you enjoyed this. Regardless, I'd say let me know your thoughts in the comments below, but frankly, if you're just going to argue about it, I really don't have an interest, so have fun, I guess. Otherwise, regular tutorials and things like that will continue as always. Get subscribed to Analog Dreams. Thank you so much for 1K subscribers. This channel is growing way faster than I expected, but I have a lot planned. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. And I don't really know how this fits into the rest of the case that I'm making, but everyone keeps bringing up that it was ruled, and to be fair, I kind of reported this similarly without, fully covering the nuance. Everyone keeps referencing that it was ruled, at least in the US, that AI art cannot be copyrighted, and thus you can't own it and shouldn't be using it for anything at all. I'm well within my rights and legality to sell my own AI art pieces right now, both because of the terms of the tool with it, but also because that ruling from the US Copyright Office was completely misunderstood. What the people were trying to do was assign copyrights to the AI, to the computer. This has already been done with PETA trying to assign copyrights to a monkey. And basically the same ruling was just passed along here, whereas non-human entities can't maintain copyright in the first place, on top of you can't assign a copyright for something without a human element to something that isn't human. Like the theoretically, I'm not going to push it right now, but theoretically, someone like me is still going to own copyright on this image. Not the sources that Midjourney came up with, but like I can own copyright on an image that an art piece or a video that I create that happens to use assets that I didn't create myself, that I either license or are royalty-free, public domain, whatever. If it's just like a repost or a very slight tweak, it's not going to hold up. But something that's completely just like built from scratch with like some basis in AI art, that's not going to be a problem. So those arguments are just completely misunderstanding the context of that decision. And once again, just reacting to headlines. Read articles, think critically. Think before you speak. Speak less, think more, ask more questions. Be kind, rewind.